Hello, everybody, and welcome to OpenExO Live. It is really great to be with you this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are around the world. And today we have David S. Rose with us, and you can see some awesome community members that are coming up in the coming weeks. And many of you from the community may have been at David's masterclass just a few weeks ago. And we'll probably get into some of that. So David is an associate founder at Singularity University and has been an entrepreneur probably his whole life and his entire family. I think he says 5th generation, if I'm not mistaken. Written books and runs Gust. And before we get him up on screen, I did ask some folks in the community just to share some words. And the first one comes from Yaroslav, and he just said, David has tons of entrepreneurial experience and many impressive accomplishments under his belt, and it's always a pleasure to interact with him and learn from him. His passion for exponential technologies and entrepreneurship is contagious, and I appreciate his bold and thought-provoking predictions for our future. Then Salim said, David Rose is a key community member. He is one of the godfathers of angel investing, author on the topic, runs Gust, and is the associate founder of Singularity University. I use his quote where he said, organizations that are designed for the 20th century are doomed for failure in the 21st in every presentation I give. And then from the masterclass that David gave, just some quotes from that. David is an incredible speaker, and it was great to relive the SU experience of his talk in the library. I really enjoyed David's energy, latest updates on exponential technologies, and learning the facts that as an entrepreneur, I will thrive. It's reassuring. And David is a great speaker. I enjoyed the topic and answers to questions. I left the call inspired with a lot of things to contemplate. And so with that, I want to welcome David up on screen. How are you doing this morning?
I'm in New York, so it's actually early afternoon.
Noon. Yes, this noon. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and join the OpenExO community for this.
Perfect. So it's really great having you. Shared a little bit about you. There were those quotes, people speaking a bit about you, but can you just share, a bit of your background? 5th generation entrepreneur. That's quite crazy. Tell us a little bit, and also how you came into the community.
Sure. So as you pointed out, I am a 5th generation entrepreneur. I was back in 1997 during the dot-com boom. I was a finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. My father won it in 2002. My father is now 93 and working on his 3rd and 4th books, and just celebrated Henry Kissinger's 100th birthday with him this week. So I come by it naturally. My family came from Eastern Europe and migrated around the world, and did a bunch of things. So as a natural born entrepreneur, which accounts for about 1% of the population, that's where I come from. But then interestingly, and so there are other people who have entrepreneurial streaks in their family and who have role models as entrepreneurs. But what's interesting is that in addition to that, I'm a 3rd generation angel investor, and I'm not sure there are any other ones of those around here. So my late great uncle, the first David Rose, after whom I was named, was the angel investor behind the portable kidney dialysis unit, vascular stapling, hyperbaric operating chambers. He invented through-the-wall air conditioning. He created the foundation for medical technology back in the 1960s, 50s or 60s. He was on the founding board of Technion Institute of Technology in Israel. And this is a guy who did not get out of the 6th grade in school and who was totally self-taught and self-made. And so I have quite a heritage to live up to. And so in our family, we were trained from birth that from those to whom a lot has been given, and we've been given a lot of it is expected, and you better give back. And so that's what I've been trying to do. So as an entrepreneur, I've been creating companies after the dot-com crash. I had a company called Air Media, which was a very far-sighted wireless communications company doing all kinds of cool things, cover a PC magazine and Walt Mossberg column on the Journal and stuff. Got very, very big, lots of venture capital. Along came the dot-com crash. It got very, very small all of a sudden. I was resigned to being kicked out of the entrepreneurial field. So I went to the dark side, became an investor, and started doing angel investing, and then ultimately founded New York Angels, which is now one of the world's largest and most active angel investment groups. That's invested, well over $100 million in over 400 companies. And so with all that going on, and founding a group, I realized that the whole angel world was very inefficient. So I got back into the entrepreneurial world, created a company called Gust, as Salim mentioned, which is the global platform that connects startup companies to investors. And that led on to other kinds of things, a couple of New York Times best-selling books about angel investing and starting companies. And so along the way, I've been a very active person at TED for many, many years. Probably 12, 13 years ago or so, there was a TED Talk at which Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis were introducing Singularity University. And I had known Peter because I had invested in a number of Peter's companies, as he's an entrepreneur and I'm an investor. And I had known Ray because Ray's aunt was actually my mother's best friend. So we parallel existence over here. And they were talking about this new thing they were launching called Singularity University. And I've been a futurist since I was probably 10 years old. I think I joined the World Future Society when I was 10 years old. And so I said, well, that's really great. I mean, and they went through all the things that SU was going to be focusing on, and, energy and bioinformatics and stuff. And one of the mainstays was, finance and entrepreneurship. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. Who's heading that for you? And Peter looked at me and said, you are. I said, okay. So that's how I got roped into this whole world. And eventually I thought what they were doing was important enough. So I joined in and helped support the founding of it. Became an associate founder, was its founding track chair for finance, entrepreneurship, and economics. And I effectively taught single-handedly for 3 years. And then eventually turned it over to Eric Ries, who wrote The Lean Startup, who followed me in that. And I've maintained my ties to Singularity U ever since then. And give a lot of talks and speeches and classes on it, because a lot of the stuff that we were talking about back then, including the future of work, which is now a mainstay thing at SU, and the future of jobs and the impact on the economy and our society of all of this exponential technology has now become front burner. So back then, when we were founding this thing, Salim and Peter and Ray and me and the others were doing this, people thought we were total crackpots, often at this airfield and at Moffett Field. So some organizations thought this was really interesting, and they brought us in to talk about like science fiction. But now, with everything that all these predictions coming true, what the very first year of Singularity University, the very first team project that our very first group of students did was called Get Around, which was for a distributed car rental system. And I was one of their mentors early on. They worked with the whole team at SU. And P.S., they went public earlier this year on the New York Stock Exchange as a $1 billion company now. So that came out of SU. There's a movie about Singularity University as well called The University. And so all that stuff is now mainstream. And so if you're looking at the effects of autonomous vehicles and privatized space flight, we now have, right now, as we speak, there is a crew of tourists on the International Space Station on a totally private sector space trip up there. And the projections about autonomous vehicles there, which seem to be something out of Thomas Swift or science fiction, are now going to be without question universal within what period of time? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And people who are naysayers about this tend to say, oh, well, you all said autonomous vehicle, every car would be autonomous within next year, but look at that, there are a couple of Teslas out there or whatever, and that doesn't make everything as far from doing that. But what everybody misses is the whole concept of exponentials, and that was the thing that was most serious about and most important about SU, and is most serious about OpenExO. And probably everybody listening to this podcast understands what OpenExO is all about. And exponential organizations are based on the concept of exponential technological growth, which means this stuff is doubling every 18 months. And when you have that, every other preconception that you had, every other thing you thought you knew. My opening lecture for Singularity University was titled "Everything You Think You Know Is Wrong," and it takes it from there. So I'll stop talking and let you ask a question.
No, absolutely, no, that's perfect. And everything we thought about how we were gonna talk today might be wrong, because I want to go to this question from Rodrigo on LinkedIn, which says, in the dynamic world of startups where innovation is constantly pushing boundaries, what do you believe is the key ingredient that separates highly successful entrepreneurs from the rest? And how can aspiring founders cultivate and embody the essential elements in their own journey?
It would be lovely to say there is this one secret sauce, this one truffle or little thing you dap in and the whole thing actually works. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. For these killer super duper founders, the Elons and the people you hear whose names are single word names now, everything has to go right. Every single thing, including an enormous amount of luck. You have to have all kinds of personal characteristics of the founder. You have to have chosen a particular area which has the potential for exponential growth. Society has to go along with this and develop in the way you thought it was going to happen. You have to have either yourself or a team of remarkable operators, and being an operator is very different from being a founder or an entrepreneur. You have to have a ton of luck because things happen and don't. You have to have persistence, but persistence really only works if you're persisting in something that's ultimately going to work.
Yes.
There are many people who, one of the real challenges of being an entrepreneurial mentor and teacher and investor is, we constantly counsel entrepreneurs to, have the courage of your convictions. 1% of the world are natural born entrepreneurs, and they're the ones who change destinies, who change, society. And so if you understand and have this vision of the future, don't let the naysayers get you down, right? Have the courage of your convictions to go and do it. And don't give up no matter how many people tell you it's not going to work. Unless I tell you it's not going to work, in which case you really better think about it, right? So that's the challenge we face. I mean, having been around for decades and seen things, I mean, there are some things we just instinctively know are just not going to work. Are we ever wrong? Yeah, occasionally we're wrong. But if we think something is just not going to work, when I say we, people who are experienced investors and founders and have been studying this for a long time and are deeply immersed in the ecosystem. If we look at it and say this really is not going to work, the odds are 98% it's not going to work, even if you continually try it. Right? It's bad enough for things we think might work don't work. But if something is clearly not going to work, then but you can't tell a founder that have the courage, your convictions, but not on this. Go do something else, and that's one of the challenges we have. So, Rodrigo, I would love to say there is a secret sauce, but there isn't. It is a whole lot of things coming together, and what founders need is something that I talk about frequently in my classes, both at SU and to entrepreneurs, which is there are like 10 characteristics that founders need to have. Right? The first of them is integrity. If you do not have integrity, everything else is for naught. If an investor or your team members or partners get the slightest whiff that you're not playing straight, you are dead. They might not tell you that, but you're dead. After that, you require passion. To be an entrepreneur, you have to overcome every odd in the book. You see things people don't see. So passion is required. And then it really helps to have experience in doing a startup. That's why investors love to fund serial founders. Experience in the domain you're operating in, domain expertise. The people who pitch me with something they know nothing about, I always wonder, no, there's a reason that this thing hasn't been done by people who actually know what they're doing, right? Then all the skills, the technical, operational, programming, whatever skills, you either have to have or have people on your team to do that. And if you're going to build a team, which you have to have if you're going to be really big and scalable, you better be a leader. And whatever that entails, that je ne sais quoi, that people might want to follow you and believe in you. And one of the things that's going to drive them to follow you is your commitment. You damn well better be committed to the end of the line. You can't if the going gets tough, you can't run away. You're the last person on the sinking ship, or the last person, on the first rocket ship up there. So you've really got to have commitment to it. And what keeps you committed to this is this vision. The Steve Jobs' original motto for Apple Computer was Apple Computer changing the world. And then the next line was one person at a time. And that gets to realism. So you better be a realistic visionary, which is almost an oxymoron, but you have to be it. And then as an investor, we like to see people who are flexible, are able to pivot, who aren't so fixated in their own minds, fixated enough to drive you, but flexible enough to change when the environment changes. So those are the sort of 10 top factors we look for in entrepreneurs. And then the 11th one, or the 0th one, depending on how you're counting, are these, are you a natural born entrepreneur? Most entrepreneurs, probably 3/4 of entrepreneurs are not these natural born crazy people, but the ones who tend to be the mega ones actually are. I mean, you look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was an entrepreneur. Bill Gates was an entrepreneur. Elon Musk is an entrepreneur. These people might not think the way, ordinary people think. And so you try and find one of those who has the other 10 sets of characteristics. And then you hope it's in an industry that makes sense, with a business plan that makes sense. And then you hope Lady Luck shines on you and the world works the way you think it's going to work, and then you can pivot and twist with it as it keeps going. So there is no one magic sauce. It's everything coming together, and we all hope that that's what we do for all of our entrepreneurial endeavors and all the companies in which we invest.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears from entrepreneurship to organizations, Salim mentioned your quote about companies that are designed for success in the 20th century, doomed for failure in the 21st. Right now, we use it all the time, and it's like a touchstone of a lot of what we do. Can you elaborate on that? What actually made you make that statement?
Well, it was very much SU. I mean, the whole what Singularity University did. The most important thing is not that it generated companies or people or whatever, is the effect of going through Singularity University for all of the participants. I liken to getting a permanently affixed pair of augmented reality goggles, in which are designed to show you the exponential future of everything. So imagine if you walk around and everything you look at, the computer you're looking at now to watch this webcast, the glass you're drinking from, the book on your, every single thing, if you think about it in terms of exponentials, and you realize how fundamentally the world is changing and is going to change. And the thing about exponentials is it changes more over time. It's changing, it's changing now more than you think, but that slope of that curve is getting to be like this and skyrocketing. And that means everything gets thrown into a cocked hat, because entrepreneurs create companies, and the operators who follow them operate companies to make them fit with the way the world works. And therefore you're using the technology of the world and the business models of the world, and you can create something new, but it leverages the existing things that are out there. And then unfortunately, most organizations are not exponential. They don't think about exponentials at all, because once you've got something going and it's a good thing, and you got a cash cow and it's generating stuff, it is devilishly hard to change your whole thing and blow up your company. And one of the most amazing things about Jeff Bezos and what he did with Amazon, and that's worth looking at, right, is he managed to reinvent himself. He started out as a bookstore, the world's biggest bookstore. And then, and that was by going online, he blew Barnes and Noble and Borders and everybody else out of the water, right? He completely destroyed that thing. And having gotten to the point where he was now literally the world's biggest bookstore, he said, okay, well, what's going to kill me? Well, what's going to kill me are when books go digital, and digital books are going to, here I have this entire operation in Memphis with warehouses and all this kind of stuff that are sitting on top of the FedEx infrastructure designed to ship books out. And what's going to kill me is when books go digital, my entire business is going to be out of business, because it's all digital. So therefore I have to kill myself. And so what he did then was to go ahead and create the ultimate digital world. And the reason we have digital books today and Kindles and the like, he didn't invent them, but he said, okay, that's it. And he bet the future on killing Amazon with digital books. And so it took a very brief period of time for Amazon to outsell with digital books all that they did there. And then having done that, to build the entire Amazon empire, that as he did, he had this enormous data centers and all this enormous AI and all this enormous enormous stuff behind it doing these incredible things. And he said, okay, now that I killed the book business with Amazon, and I killed the hardcover book business with the digital book business, well, who's going to kill my digital book business? Well, I don't know, but I know it's going to be something based in the cloud and something based on digital stuff. And so therefore, I've got to help whoever that is kill my existing business as long as I get a piece of it. And so that's how you get into Amazon Web Services and cloud services, to open up their proprietary back end, which gave them an advantage over everybody else, and make that available to everybody while being the supplier of, guns and uniforms at the war kind of thing. So he's managed to reinvent himself several times, and that's what an organization has to do. And so if an organization is designed in the 20th century to function in the 20th century and do a great job, a cost-efficient job using the tools and markets of the 20th century, and now you get into the 21st century where this exponential technology is going so fast you can't even see it grow, then that organization definitionally is doomed to failure. And the ones that are going to be the success are the ones that are thinking like exponential organizations internally and thinking about an exponential world in which we are living. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. So many traditional businesses still think that, oh, I'm a food business, therefore my competitors are other food businesses, for example, or I'm in entertainment and therefore I'm a TV station, so my competition is another TV station.
If there's one takeaway, Kevin, from this podcast and the whole OpenExO thing, nobody is safe. Not anybody, not anything. Last month, there were some folks who were using 3D printers to create food. Okay, it's not quite the replicator from Star Trek, whatever it is, but they were making a cheesecake automatically from things. If you haven't seen robotic bartenders or robotic baristas for your cappuccinos, they're all there in production, making money in airports and other kinds of places. And so there will ultimately, there's no question, whether it's food production, whether it's childcare, whether it's, everything is going to be affected by this, and nothing is immune. And if you stick your head in the sand and say it's not going to happen, you are in trouble.
Now, we maybe live in a bit of a bubble. The exponential thinking is becoming more and more mainstream, especially from the early days of SU. But with you dealing with sort of entrepreneurs and business schools and investors out there, is this exponential insight growing? Is it becoming more mainstream thinking that, yes, it is moving really fast? What is your sort of view on that?
The answer is no. It really isn't. And that's, to my mind, the most mind-boggling thing and the scariest thing. It's actually not that mind-boggling because you understand where it comes from. Human beings are not programmed to think exponentially. Nothing we do in life is exponential. Everything humans do in life is linear, right? And so you tend to think the world as it exists now is the world as it always has existed and always will exist. If something happened in big dark history, right? So for example, when in some talks I do, I play a clip of Queen Elizabeth's first television appearance to her population. It's this black and white, scratchy, grainy TV appearance of Queen Elizabeth saying in this wonderful received British pronunciation, my my subjects, this is the first time you have seen me. I must seem to you as remote as the kings and queens of ancient England, and so on and so forth. That broadcast happened in my lifetime. I was alive when that happened, right? So things like, we are closer in time to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to the building of the pyramids. People don't think about in terms of this exponential growth. And so we now are thinking, with all of the things that are happening in technology, of a linear. People tend to think that it's a straight line, but that line is now going up and you can project forward, right? Jules Verne was projecting, if you could have a one-person submarine, you can have one that can be powered by electricity and can go for months. And you can send a big gun, you can shoot a gun to the moon, that kind of stuff, right? And so we tend to think, what can ChatGPT do now? What can ChatGPT 5 do, next year or whatever? It can do more of this. But that's not exponentials. And unless you have really been through, OpenExO and the foundational stuff and understand what's going on there, or been at Singularity University, or read and really bought into Ray's and Peter's books, you will not understand it, because that's an inhuman, unnatural thing to do. And I see virtually none of that in the population. And that's the biggest challenge we have.
No, absolutely. Now, in the masterclass that you ran, you concluded with a fairly, astonishing number, saying that, if you look at where things are going with regards to technology and automation, that in the sort of midterm future, that it could be that about 75% of the population is essentially economically unemployable in our traditional way that we work right now. Yep. And therefore things need to change. Share some thoughts on that. And I know our time's coming to an end, so we have to rapid fire.
I'll speak really fast, but the bottom line is jobs are disappearing in the order of their creation. Resource extraction jobs, farming and mining and stuff like that, all being replaced now. Manufacturing and production, all those assembly lines, all of those things are now being replaced by robots and machines. Transportation, forget railroads, so talk about drones and autonomous vehicles. All of the drivers of those things are going. Retail and distribution networks, the retail stores, Amazon Go, ordering online, self-service stuff, disappearing, SaaS and coming automatically. All of the people involved in organizing and administering those companies, the second vice president for human resources in a 200,000 person company, all those jobs are disappearing. And then even things like, the intellectual creation jobs of copywriters or designers, what you see now happening with all of these large language models and the generative, AI is mind-boggling, right? So the question then is, if all of those jobs, every job that we know, or virtually every job we know, is going to be evaporated, what does the world look like in the near-term future, right? Or whenever this happens. And so, as we said, entrepreneurs, that 1% of the population who entrepreneurs deal with uncertainty. They deal with whatever the world is that they find. You give me a world with all robots, I'll deal with robots. You give me a world with no robots, I'll deal with no robots, right? So those folks will survive, but that's 1% of the population. But they're going to create new companies, and they're going to create, and the people that they're going to hire for that, 1, 2, 4, 8%, say 8% of the population, right, are going to be these STEM and creative types who will have the education, the income, the experience, the natural talents to let them work in these new companies of the future. And then after that, technology will enable a whole other class of people that I call entrepreneurial personal producers. And these are people whose work can actually add economic value: cutting your hair, taking care of your child, doing, things with your hands that a robot can't necessarily do. But those people are going to have to run their own lives as a business, what Reid Hoffman called the startup of you, right? They're going to use platforms to help them do the billing and get customers and maintain their profile and so on and so forth. So let's say that that's double the number of people who could be employed in the STEM stuff. So 8 to 16, right? So now you take, 60% of these entrepreneurial personal producers and 8% of these STEM and creative types in these startups and 1% entrepreneurs who are creating these new things there. You add that up, that's 25%. And then the next group of people are not employed, because everything else will be able to be done better, faster, and cheaper by AI, automation, robotics, you name it. And the question then is, what happens to a society? Talk about a company being doomed to failure in the 21st century. What happens to a society that was designed for success in the 20th century? What does society do in the 21st century when all of those things are out the water, when there is no way that somebody who is outside that 75%, that 25%, can be economically paying for their life on Earth? And that's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might argue with you, David, that our governments and society are maybe designed in the 19th century. But, having said that, I know you're a real optimist, though, and a real believer in abundance, a real believer in how we can, leverage technology, and also very concerned about humans, right? Like, and at the end of the day, I often say there's so many humans out there doing jobs that no human should do. No one ever, as a kid, dreamed of sweeping a street, mining for coal, doing really, things that we shouldn't be doing. So, but I guess to sort of end off, I mean, tell us why you are optimistic about the future, or what is it that people should really be optimistic about?
So what's happening in the whole basis of abundance, right, is that the 75% of the people of the population will be unemployed because they are no longer economically unemployable, which means that whatever they were doing to earn money, to create value for somebody else, can be done better, faster, and cheaper by automation, machines, technology, right? And so over time, that number doesn't get less, it gets more. That 25% goes to 20, goes to 15, 10, 5%. Interesting question. Can you ever completely eliminate humans from the operation? I won't go that far, right? But even if you just stop at 25% of humans working along with AI and robotics and stuff to create new things, the reason that they are doing that is because the value they can create more value than the people who are no longer employed. They can do it better, faster, and cheaper. So society as a whole is going to be creating more value, much more value, not defined in dollars, but defined in cars and food and houses and whatever. And that will be done better, faster, and cheaper by technology. And so ultimately, you have all of this stuff in a world of abundance with energy, whether it's solar energy or renewable resources, or whatever it is. You'll have new energy sources powering newly AI-driven, mechanics and other kinds of things. And ultimately, that will be able to supply all the things the world needs. And our challenge as a population is in the intermediate period before everything is free and available and abundant. How do we take this additional value that's being created by this small number of people and spread it across the entire population? And I believe we will ultimately figure out ways to do that because out of necessity, because we have to, otherwise the planet dies. And whether that's universal basic income or public works programs or things like that, I think that, kicking and screaming, the governments of the world, at least the smart ones, will get there. And that will be our bridge to a world of abundance.
Absolutely. David, I want to talk to you for longer, but we try keep this at 30 minutes. And I also want to respect your time. Thank you so much for joining us, for being a part of this community, for sharing so much. How many questions have you answered on Quora?
About 12,000 so far.
Exactly. So for always just, wanting to share and being so helpful to all of those around. Thank you so much. People can obviously find you in so many places, online, in our community, on all the social media platforms. But thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we get to chat again sometime soon.
It's my pleasure. I look forward to it. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Bye-bye. So fantastic chatting with David. And as I said, we could speak for longer, but of course we need to call this to an end. And I'm going to end off with a video about the Exponential Organizations 2.0 launch event that is happening on the 6th of June. It is going to be a great event with Salim and Peter, and we hope to see you there.
June 6th, it's the day that Salim and I are going to teach you how to build an exponential organization.
We're launching the second edition of the book, which goes into great detail about how do you build a 10x organization to completely change the future.
We're going to be teaching you how to build your massive transformative purpose that's going to guide you in a passionate fashion on what you're going to be building.
We found that organizations that follow this model deliver 40 times better shareholder returns than the ones that don't. So we'll talk about experimentation and how do you have an autonomous organization? How do you build community and crowd? How do you build dashboards? All of the characteristics that go into building a hyperscale organization that can scale as fast as technology can scale.
June 6th, it's a 3-hour workshop. It's free.
And it's free.
Yeah, it is free, and we've never done this before. So join us. You're going to get access to a free copy of our new book, Exponential Organizations 2.0. You're going to get access to an AI that allows you to query the book and actually get the answers you specifically need for the company that you're building.
Yeah, we have 24,000 people in the community ready to help anybody wanting to start a business. So come along, join the community, build an EXO, and most importantly, I think, pick the problem that you really want to solve, and we'll show you how to go about solving it.
Join us.
See you there.